virga. Una lavadora, una lavadora. Mira, a la virga. Una cañita. Mira la virga, el carro. Va a pegar aquí, va a pegar aquí.
A powerful monsoon storm unleashed catastrophic flash flooding across the twin border cities of Nogales on Thursday and Friday, transforming downtown streets into rushing rivers, trapping motorists, and carrying away multiple vehicles, including an official law enforcement patrol unit. The emergency began during an intense downpour typical of the region's annual monsoon season, which quickly overwhelmed local drainage infrastructure and caused local channels, notably the Nogales Wash, to swell to dangerous levels. According to local emergency management officials, the Nogales Police Department patrol car became compromised while officers were actively responding to a high-stakes rescue and recovery operation near the international border. Law enforcement personnel had been deployed to critical intersections and bridges along the Nogales Wash, following urgent reports that individuals on the Mexican side of the border in Nogales, Sonora, had been swept into the rushing waters and carried northward into U.S. territory. While executing a search and monitoring maneuver near a flood-prone channel, one of the responding police patrol units became severely mired in rapidly accumulating mud, debris, and rising waters. The officer inside the vehicle recognized the immediate danger, managed to safely abandon the vehicle, and radioed for immediate backup. Moments after the officer reached high ground, a massive surge of water, described by witnesses as a sudden wave of water and mud, struck the stationary patrol vehicle. The sheer force of the current dislodged the heavy police cruiser from the mud, pulling it entirely into the main channel of the wash. The emergency vehicle was then carried away by the violent rapids, washed miles downstream through the concrete-lined canal, before finally settling far north of the city center. Officials confirmed that while the vehicle sustained total structural damage, no law enforcement personnel were injured during the vehicle's submergence. While the loss of the patrol unit underscored the extreme power of the flash flood, the storm took a far more tragic turn for the community. On Thursday afternoon, Nogales police officers stationed at monitoring points spotted two bodies floating face down in the fast-moving currents of the wash. According to an emergency briefing released by Santa Cruz County Undersheriff Gerardo Castillo, the victims were initially observed passing the Ruby Road Bridge at approximately 3:36 p.m. Despite immediate efforts by swift water rescue teams to intercept the bodies, the violent current carried them past the Rio Rico Bridge over an hour later. On Friday morning, multi-agency search teams managed to recover the body of one victim near kilometer 22 of the wash. The victim, identified as a male in his mid-30s, was found in a condition that made immediate visual identification impossible. Authorities have actively shared details of distinctive tattoos with the Mexican consulate in an effort to identify the individual, as it is strongly suspected that both victims were originally swept into the drainage system on the Mexican side of the border before crossing into Arizona. The search for the second missing individual remains an active recovery operation. The twin border cities of Nogales share not only a geographic boundary, but also a connected watershed. Heavy rainfall landing on the elevated terrain of Nogales, Sonora, naturally funnels downward into the streets of the Mexican city, specifically along major arteries like Avenida Tecnologico. Because the urban drainage systems struggle to handle sudden multi-inch downpours, these streets quickly transform into high-velocity rivers. The water eventually discharges directly into the Nogales Wash, crossing under the international border wall and flowing north through Nogales, Arizona. Local residents on social media noted that this dangerous phenomenon has repeated itself for decades during the monsoon season, highlighting an ongoing need for binational infrastructure modernization. Local officials, including Nogales city representatives, explained that flooding of this magnitude poses an additional unseen threat to the region's public health. Running directly beneath the churning waters of the Wash is the International Outfall Interceptor, IOI, a massive international sewer line that carries wastewater from both sides of the border to a treatment plant in Rio Rico. The immense pressure and weight of the surface floodwaters risk rupturing the line, an accident that has occurred in past monsoon seasons, causing significant environmental damage. In the wake of the severe flooding, Santa Cruz County remains under a strict flash flood watch, as meteorologists warn that saturated soils will make subsequent rain systems even more dangerous. Portions of the county recorded between 1 and 2.5 inches of rainfall over a 48-hour period, and additional storms are predicted. Nogales Fire Chief Ken Lariva and city emergency coordinators have issued an urgent plea to all motorists and pedestrians to respect road closures, sandbag barriers, and temporary lighting installations. Law enforcement officials emphasized that standard passenger vehicles and even heavy utility units like patrol cars are entirely powerless against water heights of just a few inches when moving at high speeds. Just wait 10, 15, 20 minutes or an hour, whatever it takes. Local officials urged the public during a press briefing. You don't want to lose a life. Nothing is so important that you can't wait a few minutes. Emergency crews from the Border Patrol, local police, and regional fire departments remain on high alert as they continue to clear mud, recover stranded civilian vehicles, and monitor water levels along the border. Heavy rainfall transformed streets and avenues into raging torrents, sweeping away vehicles and endangering drivers and pedestrians. Among the emergencies responded to were the rescue of a woman swept away by the current, and the assistance of 2 other people trapped between cars stranded by the floodwaters. Authorities reported that the most affected roads were Tecnologico Avenue, Roquette Boulevard, Abraham Zaid Street, and several stream crossings, where water levels rose rapidly during the storm. Civil protection urged the public to avoid crossing waterways, flooded areas, and roads with runoff while the rains continue. Meanwhile, the fire department reported the rescue of several people who were trapped inside a van while trying to cross the creek tributary on Heroes Avenue. The State Coordination of Civil Protection issued a preventive notice alerting to the presence of rain in sectors of southwest and northwest Nogales, warning that conditions may change rapidly and generate runoff or sudden rise of streams. Given this situation, the public is advised to avoid crossing watercourses, drive with caution, stay away from waterways, heed the instructions of civil protection and public safety authorities, and in case of any emergency, immediately call 911. The disaster, triggered by intense monsoon storms on July 16th to 18th, 2026, caused massive infrastructure damage across the border communities of both Nogales, Sonora, Mexico, and Nogales, Arizona, United States. Rushing waters completely overwhelmed urban drainage systems, transforming regular roads into dangerous waterways that dragged cars, SUVs, and debris downstream. Eyewitness videos shared widely on social media platforms like Instagram and X captured harrowing moments of urban chaos. Entire rows of parked and moving vehicles were lifted by the fast-moving currents, slamming into one another and trapping motorists inside. In the eastern sectors of the city and along major boulevards, water levels rose so quickly that drivers were forced to abandon their cars or climb onto roofs to survive. Emergency dispatchers in Mexico reported completing over 10 high-risk rescues of drivers and stranded pets caught in the sudden deluges. On the Mexican side, civil protection teams, the volunteer fire department, and public safety officers worked around the clock to pull people from submerged cabins. The severe flooding quickly turned deadly as the volume of water from Sonora rushed northward across the international border into Arizona. The Nogales Wash, a primary drainage channel that bisects both cities, filled to twice its normal capacity. According to reports from Nogales International and local authorities, led by Santa Cruz County Undersheriff Gerardo Castillo, Multiple victims were swept away by the current from the streets of Sonora directly into the raging wash. Beyond the immediate loss of life and destroyed automobiles, local leaders have voiced extreme concern regarding the long-term impact on regional infrastructure. Nogales Councilman Marco Bonilla highlighted an invisible threat posed by the flash floods, the vulnerability of the International Outfall Interceptor, IOI. The IOI is an international sewer line that runs directly underneath the Nogales Wash, carrying millions of gallons of wastewater daily from both sides of the border. When we have this type of flooding, it puts in danger that it could burst, Bonilla explained in a public statement carried by KVOA News for Tucson. The pipeline has suffered critical ruptures during previous historical storms, raising fears of ecological and biological hazards if the concrete protective panels continue to erode. On the streets, heavy mud, debris, and displaced asphalt have blocked access to neighborhoods such as Buenos Aires and Héroes. Trash and crumpled metal from destroyed cars remain wedged against bridges, demanding extensive cleanup efforts from public works departments. In Veracruz, an indigenous woman lost her life after a landslide caused by heavy rains in the Zongolica mountains buried her wooden and sheet metal house in the community of Iczotitla, belonging to the municipality of Los Reyes. Residents of the area, along with civil protection personnel and volunteer firefighters, worked for several hours in the early morning to rescue the body from the earth and rocks, while members of the National Guard secured the area. The rainfall in the mountainous region of Veracruz also caused serious mobility problems. In the municipality of Magdalena, landslides completely blocked the main access road, while in Astacinga, a landslide obstructed the Astacinga to Tehuipango Federal Highway. State authorities also reported damage to the Zongolica to Tehuipango route and the Iczotitla to Loma Buena Vista section. Civil protection warned that accumulated moisture is keeping several hillsides at risk of collapse and urged the population to stay alert for warnings. Authorities recommended that people living in high-risk areas take extra precautions due to the possibility of further landslides.